New Orleans Pelicans could win the championship this year, and I don't think anybody should be shocked if that happens. Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of NBA Now. It's your boy Dom, and we're gonna get right into things here today. So, today, we are talking about the New Orleans Pelicans. So obviously the New Orleans Pelicans are one of the youngest teams in the NBA with one of the brightest futures in the NBA that are also coming off of a playoff berth. So it's kind of crazy to think about, how you have a potential generational talent on your team who didn't even play last season, but you were still able to take a team in the Phoenix Suns who won over 60 games. In fact, they won 64 games in the regular season, and you were able to take them deep in a playoff series and convince a lot of people that you could beat a team that had just gone to the finals the year before without your best player on your roster, right? Kind of insane to think about. Obviously, last season was a wild ride for the New Orleans Pelicans, but it showed a lot. Obviously, following the season, we've seen Zion Williamson extend his contract with the organization, taking the rookie max deal to stay with New Orleans, and so far to this point, all he has done is shut down trade rumors. So, that was kind of a whirling story his whole time in the NBA, of when he'll get traded from the Pelicans, as obviously we've seen them have multiple all-time greats in Chris Paul and Anthony Davis come through the building and exit swiftly as well. Both technically being traded to the Lakers, except Chris Paul's trade being vetoed and then ending up in a different Los Angeles team. And so, the big thought process has been, when's Zion going to end up on the Knicks or whatever it is, right? And he's continued to shut them down. And I think him signing the extension doesn't guarantee that, but it does, I think, further that, point that he wants to be there. He wants to build something here. He sees something's being built. He's happy that, the guys that he plays with, make him want to be there. You know what I mean? He's built a camaraderie with his teammates, whether the media portrays it or not. It is at least apparent from an outside perspective that seems to be kind of how it is. And yeah, so the New Orleans Pelicans coming into this next season are going to be having him come back after not having him for an entire season. And when we look at what Zion did the last time that he played NBA basketball, it's pretty good. Obviously, like I said, did not play this last season, but the year before he was a first-time All-Star, as only his second year in the league, and he averaged 27 points per game. He had about 3.7 assists per game, 7 rebounds per game, and almost a steal and about half a block per game as well. Was historical scoring inside the paint, shooting 61% from the field, and from 3 he only shot 29%. So when you're able to score that well on the field while still shooting that bad from 3, obviously he's not taking a plethora of threes, but it just shows to how dominant he was inside the three-point line, which is very different than a lot of modern players, right? He did only play 61 games there, and at this point he's only played 85 games in 3 years, so injuries still looking to potentially be a concern. Obviously missing an entire season this last year due to injuries. Hopefully, that doesn't continue in the future, but it is something of note that we should point out as it relates to this next season, because whoever knows, right? Knock on wood, hope no harm, no foul, hope nothing happens, right? But it is definitely something to keep in the back of your head, right? When you look at the rest of this roster, though, there is definitely a lot of other guys that, pushed this team last year without Zion being there. The main guy being Brandon Ingram, the guy that has been the Pelicans' best player ever since trading Anthony Davis. Obviously Zion had, last year and everything like that, but Brandon Ingram has made an all-star team with the Pelicans as well. Brandon Ingram has averaged over 22 points per game every year with the Pelicans since going there. He hasn't played more than 62 games in a season, for them, so that's also something of note. His most games that he ever played was his rookie year in Los Angeles, where he played 79. Since then, his highest is 62, in which that was the year that he got selected to the All-Star team, his first year with the Pelicans. So something else to note. Not anything major to this point, other than one scare, kind of when he was leaving Los Angeles with the blood clots, I believe. But it seems that things have kind of hopefully figured itself out there, and hopefully we continue to see him play more and more games every year. And then CJ McCollum. CJ McCollum was the B to the A of Brandon Ingram last year that led this team to the playoffs. He was traded to the New Orleans Pelicans and played very, very well there. Now, last year with the Portland Trailblazers, we saw him average 20 points per game. Obviously, there was a lot of injuries going on there. Dame was injured. The team kind of exploded last year for the Trailblazers, which allowed them to get the 7th overall pick in the NBA draft. But CJ was one bright spot, and he ended up getting traded around the trade deadline to finally split up the duo of Dame and CJ, something that's been talked about for about 3 or 4 years now at this point, really ever kind of since CJ entered his prime. The question was if those two could kind of stick together and do something, and whether they overstayed it or not. Eventually, they did end up breaking up the duo last year, and when he went over to the Pelicans, he just got better, right? So he was averaging 20 points per game, 4 assists and 5 rebounds, 4 assists and 4 rebounds with the Blazers. When he got to the Pelicans, he upped that to almost 25. He was averaging 24 points per game. He was averaging almost 6 assists and again 4 rebounds as well. He also actually increased his steals from 1 steal to 1.3 steals per game, which is actually a pretty significant increase when you look at it from that perspective. Only played 26 games with the Pelicans, whereas he played 36 with the Blazers, only equating to 62 total games. So obviously that's 20 games missing out of a regular season. But the last couple years he's been kind of injury prone, injured a little bit. Nothing like too crazy to the point where it seems like it'll persist into the future of his career. Obviously, to start his career, when you look at his kind of first jump, his first season where he averaged 20 points per game, that was his 3rd year in the league. He played 80 games. He played 80 games the next year, 81 the next year, 70 the 2 years following after that. So I don't think he has any persistent injuries that'll continue to hamper him. And so that shouldn't be an issue as we kind of go into the future with this team. He is 30, as something to note. So he is kind of in the center to the late stages of his prime. And we'll kind of see how that goes going forward, how well he ages with his game. Typically guards age a little bit better than other positions, so it shouldn't be anything to worry about, at least for a year or two. Now, when you look at the surrounding pieces around those two guys that were able to push the team to what was only 36 wins 36 wins last year, but a playoff berth due to the play-in tournament, in which they were able to show out and show up when it mattered, fighting their way for the 8th spot, and forcing the likes of the Spurs and the Clippers to not make the playoffs, where the Clippers had 42 wins and the Spurs had 34 wins, so less than the Pelicans. But in a non-play-in situation, 4 years ago, Pelicans would have been the 9 seed, Pelicans would have been the 9 seed, Clippers would have been the 8 seed, and Pelicans would have never had an opportunity to show what they did in the playoffs, which was quite a bit, which we kind of talked about a little bit earlier. So back to the supporting cast around this group. Devontae Graham was a guy that was brought in. I think the Pelicans, for some reason, thought that he was going to be more than he was. He's been decent for them, but he's been Devontae Graham. Nothing of note to note that he's done extraordinary. He's Devontae Graham. I don't know how else to put that. There's not a lot that you're expecting to grow from what he provides you, but he does provide you, a decent amount of offense when it comes to, spreading the floor, just being able to shoot, just being able to kind of be another guy that can score the ball. Last season, we saw him average about 11 points per game, so a little less than what he was doing with Charlotte, where his highest was 18 points per game his 2nd year in the league. But, shooting splits-wise, he shot 34% from 3. He shot 36% from the field. Yeah, a little bit lower than what he had in Charlotte, but nothing that was too drastic. Kind of typical of a change of scenery that you're either going to see a little bit uptick or a little bit downtick, dependent just upon fit and stuff like that. Your role within the system obviously changing and everything like that. He was able to average 4 assists per game last year, which was actually better than kind of expected. He isn't like a true playmaker as of sorts for a lot of guys. Now, yeah, his sophomore season in the league, he averaged 7.5 assists per game, which is a lot. But when you look at Devontae Graham, he's not like a true playmaker, true point guard type of guy. He's more of a combo guard that gets the assists in the flow of offense. And so 4 assists is definitely nothing to sneeze at, but was definitely good enough for him last year. And like I said, he was Devontae Graham. Herbert Jones, or Herb Jones, as he's known, was a big star rookie for them last year, coming in and making a big impact. Obviously, he was not expected to do necessarily what he did this last year, only being the 35th pick in the draft, the 5th pick in the second round. But what we did see him do was average about 10 points per game, shoot about 33% from 3, which is slightly below league average. But I always just like, if you shoot 33%, I'm good with you taking 3-pointers. I believe league average is like 34%. So if you really want to go to the nitty gritty, he was 33.7%, so he was almost there. But yeah, I mean, he shot well enough from 3, shot well enough from the field, 47% from the field. But really what sticks out, is his defense. He averaged 1.7 steals and 0.8 blocks per game, playing about 30 minutes per game, and was just he was a hustle guy. He was kind of a glue guy for this team, was able to kind of play multiple positions, whether you had him at the 4 or you were starting him as your shooting guard. It didn't really matter where he had to kind of plug in and play. He was able to kind of show out and show up, something that this team did a lot last year. Trey Murphy is definitely somebody we're going to get into here in a minute, but I do want to kind of go over a couple other pieces on this roster. Mainly, we're going to look at Jonas Valanciunas right now. Jonas Valanciunas was a guy who was solid. He was solid for the Pelicans. Obviously, during the offseason, he was traded from the Memphis Grizzlies over to the New Orleans Pelicans after spending a few years in Memphis. A trade that was looked at as a huge, huge win for the Pelicans, which, when you look at Trey Murphy, that may be so. And a big loss for the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, Memphis was able to figure it out and obviously go on to do a lot and make the playoffs as the 2nd seed. But it was looked at that Steven Adams wouldn't fit as well, and they were able to make things work and everything like that, and get value out of Jonas Valanciunas in the same time, where Jonas Valanciunas was able to go to the New Orleans Pelicans and kind of be the 3rd guy next to Ingram and CJ in their equation last year. Obviously, we've talked about Devontae and Herb Jones, but Valanciunas was really that 3rd guy for them last year. And when you think about him moving to be the kind of 4th option on this team, where he was almost averaging 20 last year. He was averaging 17.8 points per game, not a career high, because his first year in Memphis he averaged 19.1 points away from averaging 20 points per game. So technically he's never been a 20-point per game scorer, but from 3 he's pretty solid as a big man. Obviously he had a big stretch at the start of the year where I think he was the best 3-point shooter in the league for like a month. Just because he only had like 7 attempts and he hit like all of them. I think he was shooting like 80% or something like that. But he ended the year as a 36% shooter. Pretty consistent over the past few years as a shooter from 3 there. He was taking 2.1 attempts, which was pretty much double what he'd done previously at any point in his career, where that was good to see that, that percentage was able to continue over with the increase in attempts per game. And then his field goal percentage did dip kind of from previous years in his career down to 54%. But that's nothing insane. It dipped a couple percentage points. Nothing. It's not like he was shooting 70%. He was shooting like 55, 58. So nothing crazy there. And yeah, he was able to kind of just do his thing and really show out for this team. Stretch the floor. Him next to Zion really makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people liked that move last offseason for the Pelicans. When you just looked at the perspective of getting Valanciunas to pair with Zion in your front court, but when you're also able to end up with Trey Murphy due to stuff like that, that only I think furthered the opinion of this trade for the Pelicans when it comes from a exterior opinion, right? So definitely a guy that was crucial for them last year and did a lot. I like the way he fits with this team. Like I said, and especially next to Zion in the front court, being able to step it out, give Zion his space in the paint, and just let him go to work. Now, obviously, yeah, you're not going to have Valanciunas sitting on the three-point line all game, but if he is, and when he is, it's not a detriment to your team, and in some cases, it can just be a bonus to your team to be able to have that, right? Now, Dyson Daniels was the rookie that was drafted this year. He's looked to have a lot of potential. Obviously, we did see him kind of have some ankle stuff come up during Summer League. So we'll see how that goes throughout the season. But I don't know a ton about him. I do just know that there is a lot of hype surrounding him. And from what I can kind of tell, he might be a sleeper to really kind of step up and do a lot for this team, providing some of that playmaking that we haven't quite seen on this team so far. Obviously, CJ elevated his playmaking when he was forced into a point guard role here. Like I said, Devontae Graham was able to average a decent amount himself, and then Brandon Ingram as a primary ball handler isn't awful in it as well. But without a true playmaker so far, sprouting themselves on this roster, there's definitely opportunity for Dyson Daniels to take hold of that. So we'll see how he plays in his rookie year. Jose Alvarado, everybody knows, the thief of the NBA, right? Stole all of Chris Paul's change. Yeah, the little sneak, obviously a super cool story last year to watch him kind of do his thing and kind of help be one of those gritty guys for the team along with Herb Jones. And then other than that, there's Jackson Hayes, who still hasn't lived up to his potential of being a top 10 draft pick in the NBA, but then again, he is still very, very young. At this point, he's your backup center, which isn't bad. Having an athletic guy that you can throw out there. I guess he was the 8th pick, sorry. For some reason, I thought he was 10. Anyways, an athletic guy that you can throw out there and he can do stuff is really good. And, moving into a lesser role last year, he was still able to increase his production. His minutes did go up. So technically, I guess you could look at that as not him moving into a lesser role. But I think he was viewed as a lesser asset last year, and he was still able to do more with that. He averaged 10 points on 60% shooting, kind of playing in spots where you would see Zion. So this next year, if Jackson Hayes was able to elevate his game with his athleticism next to Valanciunas on the front court, you can only dream of what Zion is going to be able to do this next season, and so that's definitely something to think about. I also do like that he's shooting 35% from 3, something I think I didn't realize up to this point, but is something to note that could definitely help him earn more playing time on this ever-growing deep team. And Larry Nance, another one of those glue guys. I think he'll be solid for this team this next season. Nothing crazy to say about him. It's Larry Nance. He can steal the ball. He can do a little bit on offense, a little bit on defense. He's not a star or anything, but he plays his role well. Kyrie Lewis, a guy that was kind of a question when he was drafted to this team, is still kind of a question when he was drafted to this team, so we'll see what kind of happens with him as his career progresses. But the guy I've been waiting all video to get to talk about is Trey Murphy. Trey Murphy can be an X factor for this team. A lot of people around the NBA and around the NBA community love what this guy could potentially provide for this team. Obviously, he was technically drafted by the Memphis Grizzlies, but he was taken with the 17th overall pick and later traded to New Orleans on draft night. Or he might have been traded prior to being picked, technically. But yeah, he was traded to New Orleans, and he's a guy, he can shoot the ball. He's got some athleticism to him. I know he had a crazy dunk last year. I was scrolling through Instagram the other day, and I saw the dunk that he had. And I was like, wow, I can't believe I didn't see that during the regular season. It was a pretty phenomenal play when you think about him just being so young. And, he only played how many minutes per game last year? 13 minutes per game. So being able to pull something off like that when you're not expected to do that, when you're expected to be more of a perimeter player, is definitely indicating how much potential this guy has. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see what he can do this next season. He only averaged 5 points per game last year in 13 minutes. But I think as a rookie with little expectations, being drafted outside the lottery, him potentially having the opportunity to kind of show more, be able to space the floor. He's going to be important as a lengthy defender, and we'll see how he can take a jump in his sophomore season, especially bringing in such a interior threat in Zion this next season, how he'll be able to play off that. So he's super exciting for the future of this team, has a lot of potential next to as just a catch and shoot guy next to some of the creators on this team, whether it's Ingram, whether it's Zion, whether it's CJ. Somebody's going to end up being open when you look at stuff like that. And with him being a lengthy defender, he's always going to be able to be on the court. And so if he's only able to shoot, what we've seen is he is able to shoot, right? Shooting 39% from three, 38% from three last year. And so we've seen that he's able to shoot. And so if you can shoot and you're a lengthy defender and you have a lot of star talent next to you, you are the perfect player to fit next to other guys, right? A Mikal Bridges, a DeAndre Hunter, that type of thing, where every team that continues to rebuild and kind of build up these guys. We saw Phoenix find Mikal, we saw Atlanta find DeAndre Hunter. Those are just the two that are coming to the top of the mind. I think Benedict Mathurin in this last draft could definitely be one of those guys for the Indiana Pacers, if not more. I've been seeing a lot about him, but yeah, I think Trey Murphy definitely could be that guy for the Pelicans when it comes to that sense. And I like his defensive upside and his offensive upside. So we'll kind of see what he can do in his second year in the league. Now back to, I guess, the bread and the butter, Zion Williamson. Really, that's what it comes down to. What the Pelicans can do this next year comes down to how Zion can just dominate the paint, how he can just be better than a lot of players, how he potentially could be a top 10 player in the league. Honestly, we know how transcendent of a talent, how unique of a talent, how unique of just a player and person he is. And so I think I'm super excited to watch him next season. He's an electric player, whether you like him or not. I don't really know any Zion haters out there, just because when you watch the guy, you're happy just watching basketball, just because of some of the stuff that he's been able to pull off in even just his short career to this point, especially when you look back at Duke, though. If he's able to do some of the defensive things he did there, which isn't, I don't even think, an expectation of him anymore. I think what he just does on offense is enough to be a number one on a team. But if he's able to kind of tap into some of that defensive stuff that we saw at Duke, who knows, especially with some of these lengthy defenders that we've named on this team, in Herb Jones, in Trey Murphy, in Larry Nance, Jackson Hayes. Like, there's a kind of a plethora of these guys starting to build up on this team. And we saw a few years ago, so not this last season, but the last season that Zion played, one thing that plagued this team a lot was their defense, and more of a lack thereof, their defense, right? And so with this continued youth movement and being able to find some of these diamonds in the rough here and there, they are these athletic guys. It should help with some of that, and we'll kind of see how that goes. But yeah, bread and butter for this team to be super, super good, it comes down to Zion. This team, look, the New Orleans Pelicans could win the championship this year, and I don't think anybody should be shocked if that happens. Now, I say that for a reason. It's because, like I said, Zion could be a top 10 player in the league, and if you're a top 10 player in the league, you have an opportunity to take your team to a championship no matter what, especially when you look at the supporting cast around him in Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum, who are, like, Brandon Ingram's been the best player on an NBA team for a few years now, right? Because due to Zion's injuries and everything, I would say he's been the best player on the Pelicans for the last few years. And when you look at CJ, he's one of the best, Robins in the league. He's one of the best players to never make an all-star team, right? If not the best player to never make an all-star team, along with having a suitable center in Jonas Valanciunas that can stretch the floor and works well with the rest of your team. I mean, this team is scary. They're deep. They have high-end talent. They've got good, secondary and tertiary stars next to an all-time great talent, right? And so this team could easily win the championship. They could easily flame out again. Who knows? But I think Zion obviously being the X factor as the best player on the team is one of the craziest scenarios and storylines in all of basketball. And so I'm just excited to watch New Orleans Pelicans basketball this year. I think there's a lot of teams this next season that maybe we are going to see kind of find themselves, right? I think, and the Pelicans are definitely one of those teams. I 100% have them making the playoffs, probably as a 5 seed or higher. I think even if you do see some injury concerns with this team, which you would hate to see, but I think at worst you see them as a 5 seed or higher. And so the Pelicans, they look super interesting for this year, and I can't wait to see what happens. But with that said, hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, and I'll catch you all next time. Peace out, guys.